Hi there. What I wanted to talk about was buzzwords. Now, there's a problem that people complain that we use too many buzzwords, but I think that that's a little misunderstood. The current big buzzword is real-time, and I'm not sure that actually describes what we want. So rather than use the real-time buzzword, I want to talk about some words that I've found useful in describing the things that the new web requires, the new world of activity streams, of real time, of flow, and all those things. So let me walk you through some of the words that I found useful. If I hit the right button. So the first word is flow. Rather than talking about real time, think about what we're looking at the web now as a flow of information that we dip into and dip out of. It is a stream. As Dana puts it, you live inside the stream, adding to it, consuming it, redirecting it. The point is to reach flow. Rather have a list of things in your inbox that you have to read and get through, rather than the web being your to-do list. Now the web is a place of flow that you dip into and dip out of, make sense of, and pass things on. The next thing that I think is really important that's changed in the last couple of years is faces. We used to a textual web. I grew up with a textual internet with Usenet and IRC, but now you could always add faces to things, but now it's expected. You go to Twitter, you go to Facebook, you go to any of these sites, you have a face next to the information. And this is something that's enormously powerful. If you make the face bigger, suddenly the information makes more sense to you. Having a face next to the information, it taps into your brain at a very deep underlying level. A very large part of our brain is designed to make sense of faces and who we trust. So if you have a face next to some information you're reading, it can engage that part of your brain, and you can then decide how much to trust that information based on the person who sent it to you. Rather than have trust networks in the computer, having trust networks in our brain that understand friendship and context is enormously powerful. The models we can build in the computer are only ever going to be much cruder than this, because there are as many synapses in your brain as there are nodes on the internet. So there's always going to be more subtlety in your head than the computer can come up with. And this brings me to another characteristic that we've seen with Twitter, with Facebook, with other social networks. This is the word phatic. Now, this is an academic term, but what it means is an action that's designed for grooming purposes, for social interaction, not necessarily meant to convey any meaning in the sense of information, but it's done there to feel close to somebody else, to bring them into your world. And if you look at the criticisms of social networks, of Twitter, it's that these things are boring, they're talking about lunch, they're talking about silly things that I don't care about. And the point is, if it's someone you know, if it's someone you have a model of in your head, you do care what they had for lunch. You do care that they're in Paris meeting other people. And so even the trivia of their life acts to create this phatic connection with the people in your life. And it also means that as you can start making this connection with other people as well, outside the group that you started with. Which brings me to the idea of following. This is the subtle concept of not assuming that all relations are bidirectional. This is something that Twitter made manifest as compared to earlier social networks, by saying you can follow someone without them having to agree to it first. But actually, this is a basic pattern that's part of the web. If you think about how the web works as a whole, you can link to something without it having to link back to you. And it was that difference from the earlier hypertext systems that meant the web could scale up to the size it did. Imagine if every page had to show all the links that point to it before it could load. That would mean that you wouldn't be able to build an Amazon, an Apple.com, or a site that has that many links, because it would just collapse under the weight. So this asymmetric linking, the idea of following, is enormously powerful. But it's very powerful in a social context too, because when you have a model of sociality where you can just decide to pay attention to somebody, the phatic interactions can come into play, and you can start modeling them as part of your world too, and connecting to them. Which brings me to the next idea of semi-overlapping publics. We've had a lot of talk about public and private, but the notion of there is a public space only dates back to the invention of mass media, because at that point there was a very channeled space where you could be public. there wasn't an individual space that you could be, many individual spaces to be public in. So the idea from sociology is there are many publics, and with this following network, you can make them semi-overlap so that we can all see a different world. We can all look into the web and see a different web. Again, quoting Dana, when researching teenagers, the teenagers' idea of publics is not everyone. They want a place that hasn't got parents and creeps in it. They want a place that's just their peers that they want to be part of. And that's effectively what we do when we follow people. We're trying to collect a peer group to influence and make sense of the world. And that leads to the idea of mutual media. If you think about how we interact through these networks of following and publics, we're all filtering the world for each other. We're all making sense of it by reading some of it and passing some of it on, by linking to it, by retweeting it, by quoting it and citing it. So effectively, we're all filtering the web for each other. We're mutually mediating the world to construct a more interesting world for us to read and make sense of. So the criticism of this is that, the historic criticism of, but if you all look at your own thing, you won't talk to each other, you won't be connected, you'll disappear into your own private world where all your beliefs are reinforced. This is actually not, this doesn't work out in practice because of what's called small world networks. The idea of a small world network is that it connects, it's very easy for information to flow through it, because although it has a lot of local links, it has a few long-range ones, and information actually propagate a long way wherever it starts. And this is empirically true. If you look at YouTube, if you look at Twitter, an idea can start anywhere in the world and be spread to the whole world very, very rapidly. However, there is still a problem, and this is something Dana alluded to this morning. There is a problem where people still construct outgroups. They decide that sets of people don't belong with them, and they will label them and discuss them and talk about them in many different ways. And the analogy that I like here is thinking of the different parts of the web as different countries. This is XKCD's map of the web, where he takes each site and treats it as a country. And this feels quite right to me, because when you meet people who belong to a different site, they will tell you it's great, and you'll go and visit it, and it'll feel a bit alien, and you might want to explore, you might not. But if you're the kind of person who would come to Paris from America or vice versa, then you probably would explore it. But lots of people take the sort of knee-jerk way of closing down and instead start condemning people. So I've got a selection from mainstream press here of outgrouping of social networks. Oliver James in The Times says, "A follower is someone young who's marginalized, empty, and pointless without an inner life." He's talking about Twitter. Michael Wolff in Business Week described people on MySpace as cretins, poor, and no one beyond an 8th grade of education, for backwards people. And Pete Cashmore from Mashable, while talking about a new feature for Orkut, described it as super easy for Orkut's Brazilian drug dealers to text message each other. And so each of these people is outgrouping people, partially based on the racial and cultural overtones that Dana was talking about, but similarly just on the networks they belong to. So the challenge for us is how we get out of this thinking, do the things that Dana was talking about this morning, look out to the rest of the web and connect to these other countries. With a small world network, it's not that hard to find information propagating in from other places. However, there is an idea that I'm very excited by, is the idea of tunneling. Now, this is another foreign word. This is a Yiddish word, and it means the person who connects people with each other, the person who is the life and soul of the party. If you look at social networks and communities that work, you will find somewhere there is a person who is doing this, who is bridging the pieces together and actually making connections beyond the narrow piece of their own lives, expanding it out. And with the other infrastructure I've described, with the small world networks, with the following model, with the overlapping publics, it doesn't take many tumblers to unify the ideas and spread them out across the web. So that's my set of words that help me think about the web. And I'd be very interested to hear what you think about it too. Thank you. Let's go out now.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Okay.
Thank you.